Hey, it's me, JoJo from Juris. And shocker, I have something to say. Republicans are attacking immigrants again. They are vilifying immigrants again. They are demonizing immigrants again. They are stoking xenophobia and bigotry again. This time, they are trying to scare a nation by portraying those who came here seeking a better life as boogeymen who want to eat their pets. And while it's a new ethnic group they're demeaning, and it's a new small town they're destroying, this is nothing new. We've seen this playbook before. We've seen the damage it can do. Whole communities being ripped apart all over this country repeatedly over baseless, ugly, intentional, horrific lies. And I have something to say about that because it's disgusting and it's unforgivable and it's un-American. You see, my father was an immigrant. He came to this country from Lebanon as a teenager. He spoke very little English, but he worked hard, and he got a full scholarship to college, and then he spent his entire professional career working for our Department of Defense. Donald Trump says that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country, and nothing could be further from the truth. As President Joe Biden said, we are a nation of immigrants, and that's what makes us so damn strong. JFK said, everywhere immigrants have enriched and strengthened the fabric of American life. Reagan said anyone from any corner of the world can come to live in the United States and become an American. My dad loved America, and he instilled that love in me. He believed in the promise of America, and he instilled that belief in me. He didn't poison the blood of our country. He served our country proudly. And anyone who says otherwise about him or any other immigrant who comes here seeking a better life has no business serving as our president. My guest this week is Florida Democratic Party Chair Nikki Fried. Nikki served as Florida's 12th Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services from 2019 to 2023. She's a lifelong Floridian attorney and passionate activist. When Nikki was elected in 2018, she became Florida's only statewide elected Democrat and the first female ever to serve as commissioner. Nikki is an incredibly consequential party chair, and she is flipping Florida on its head. She's been instrumental in putting an abortion amendment on the ballot in this November, something she identified a need for as soon as the Dobbs decision came down. Nikki is leading the charge to reclaim Florida, to reclaim patriotism, and to reclaim a love for this country. But more than that, to reclaim our role, we the people, our role in protecting and shaping this democracy. Anybody and everybody I have told I was going to interview Nikki Fried has said the following: she's the best. And it's true, she's the best. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast, technically for the second time, right, Nikki? Because I think we talked in Chicago briefly. Nikki Fried, welcome, Democratic Party Chair for the state of Florida. Welcome to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you. I am so super excited about doing this together. There's just so much to talk about.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. And Florida sort of feels like, oof, man, we've talked about this. It's this proving ground for Project 2025, but it's also the intersection of where the people in Florida are versus what seems to be the agenda that is being imposed upon them by Republicans, and what's going to give first, and what's going on with all of that.
Yeah, we've been saying this too. And for those who don't know my background, I was Commissioner of Agriculture first in the state of Florida for 4 years. And so I was a member of the cabinet. And so I sat next to DeSantis for 4 straight years when he'd have cabinet meetings. He decided to cancel a lot of the cabinet meetings, clemency meetings, because I was there. And so, but, I've been complaining and screaming about these issues. The first time I called him a dictator was outside of my office in March of 2020. And I thought I was lost my mind. Oh my God, you're calling the governor of the state of Florida a dictator. I was like, look at his policies. And so I was starting to raise the alarms 4 years ago. And so what we have seen, just this very deliberate movement to an extreme agenda. It first started kind of in like testing the waters on this Don't Say Gay bill and trying to take some power from the cabinet and from the legislature. And he kind of tested the waters. And then when he saw that there was just Democrat yelling, and that, he kept going. But it's been the Florida blueprint, is Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation created that. And then the Heritage Foundation obviously created Project 2025, but it's the attacks on the LGBTQ+ community. It is the attacks on DEI. It's attacks on both K through 12 and higher education. It's demonizing immigrants. immigrants. It is going after, big corporate, Disney. It is going after, just our biggest employers of the state, removing of elected officials, the threatening of people. It is just one thing after another. And of course, abortion, that now we're living under a 6-week abortion ban. That's part of Project 2025 and certainly was part of the Florida blueprint. It's not who Florida is. And that's what breaks my heart is that Florida, which I was born and raised in, my parents were born and raised here, my sister's here, my grandparents are here, and we've always been like a libertarian state. I'm Jewish, and so I had a Jewish community that I was raised in, and there's, if you wanted to hang out in Duval Street, or you want to go throw beads at Gasparilla, or go to Daytona 500, you found your community, and everybody else left you alone. And DeSantis has just really decimated the culture of what Florida is.
And from my viewpoint here in New Jersey, it's like, oh my gosh, one thing after another, and now you have a ballot measure. You have a couple of ballot measures coming up, but you have a ballot measure coming up that does address abortion and would reverse the 6-week ban, right? Essentially, but DeSantis is up to his old tricks, so to speak. Like he does it. People are saying that he's like got Gestapo tactics, etc. I mean, there's a person who's threatened truth tellers before. What is he doing now?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. He has come out against Amendment 4, which, we knew he would because obviously he's pushed the 6-week abortion ban, even though, which I think is crazy, 77% of Floridians did not want a 6-week abortion ban. And seeing the reaction across the entire country, whether it was Kansas to Ohio and everybody in between, who, when you saw abortion rights being under attack, you saw these coalitions of Democrats, Republicans, Independents saying, well, not so fast. And the fact that he didn't get those cues when he got slammed when he was running for president, I just don't understand that this is not a great messaging for him if he ever wants to run, for president again. So what he has done in the last couple of weeks, one, he has sent, Gestapo. Back in 2021 or beginning part of 2022, he passed a new law that basically created a election police. And gave all of this money, even though it is already part of like our Florida Department of Law Enforcement, already part of things that they always did. But now they used this to arrest 6 returning citizens back in 2022, right before the primaries, trying to intimidate Black voters that may have been, had criminal convictions that now are able to vote again. And he's now doing the same tactics here, knocking on people's doors who signed the petitions, asking if they have this is their signature. They're coming with like, file folders of these people. And so you're talking about, maybe a 75-year-old woman or an independent or even a Republican, and they're getting intimidated by him. They're also doing deep dive investigations into the petition gatherers. And they've gone even one step further, where we've actually filed criminal complaints against his department because they created a website that goes off of ACA, which is the agency of basically administrative for Medicaid, Social Security, and whatnot. And they have used state resources, to create an entire splash page that talks about how bad Amendment 4 is and all of the misinformation. Like, using state dollars to electioneer and create propaganda is actually against the Florida statutes. And they don't care. They don't care. And they're using PSA, TV commercials, and radio ads to send people back to that website.
And they don't care. Why don't they care? Why? That seems to me another thing. He seems to think that he's beyond the realm of the reach of consequences. I mean, he really just keeps pushing the line. Is there no recourse? I mean, like you said, you can go after him for this. There has to be recourse, right?
At the end of the day, the recourse is the voters.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, what's happened here in the state is that he has so intimidated people, whether it was during the pandemic, threatening school board members that if they actually wanted, to have mask mandates in classes or any of those natures, he was threatening local electeds who didn't follow in line with him. The legislature has given him complete power. So there is no 3 branches of government here in the state of Florida. He has consolidated power underneath him. The Supreme Court, majority of the Supreme Court justices in Florida have been appointed by him, all Federalist Society members. So we don't have democracy here. And so at the end of the day, the people will have their say in November. We're stuck with him for 2 more years. We don't have, recall for the governor, and certainly his very Republican legislature isn't going to impeach him. So we're stuck with him. And the only recourse is people going to the ballot box in November and sending a very clear message to these Republicans that this is beyond politics. This is beyond comprehension of where democracy is supposed to be.
Right. We, the people, has been removed from the equation. But what do the people of Florida even look at anything he's done as being beneficial to them? I mean, that's the thing too, because if he's doing all of this overreach, he's not offering them anything that's good for them or benefits their lives in any way.
None. I mean, right now, Florida is the #1 state for inflation. We are double that of the national average because DeSantis has done nothing to utilize the resources that were coming from the infrastructure bill or the IRA to come into Florida to kind of offset costs. He's not going after food stores that are obviously jacking up the prices and not reducing them. And our property insurance is in crisis mode. It is increased 400% since he became governor. So you're talking about people that either have lived here for a long time. I don't talk about my mother. She's 73 years old on a fixed income. Her property insurance has doubled in the last year and a half. And that was after being kicked off of 2 insurers, being told that she has to replace her roof, which was an out of cost, for her out of pocket. And there's no solution. And we have what's called citizens insurance, which is an insurance of the state that is supposed to be of last resort if you can't find insurance anywhere else. Right now, we're sitting at 1.3 million policies in the insurer of last resort now as the insurer of only resort. And that creates a $537 billion exposure to the state of Florida. So if in fact a hurricane of a Cat 4, Cat 5 hits a heavily populated area, it will bankrupt the state. And there's called a hurricane tax that no matter if you have a citizen's policy or not, you will be responsible for an assessment, a hurricane tax, to offset some of those costs. It is a disaster here, and he doesn't care.
And exactly, he doesn't care. And he's sort of a blueprint. He is really a blueprint, right? For what other red states would do or can do or might be able to do, but also what Donald Trump might be able to do. I mean, Donald Trump and he, there's not much light between them despite all of their, disagreements with each other. That's a personality thing.
Which I love to watch.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's like hard to pick, like, who do you want to root for? And that one, I'm just rooting for them both to lose, right? So it's anyway.
It's like me watching an FSU versus University of Miami game. As a Florida Gator, I'm like, can they both lose?
Yeah, right. Like it's me, it's Washington versus anything in Philadelphia, but or Long Island versus anything in Philadelphia, anything versus Philadelphia, period. But he doesn't feel like he has to do anything, but he can still do all of that anti-democratic stuff because democracy, like you said, it doesn't exist in Florida anymore. So he really is, to your point, basically existing as a dictator. I mean, I have a friend who's a journalist in Florida who was forcibly removed from a press conference years ago, Grant Stern. I mean, this is the kind of thing that dictators do, and it's the kind of thing Donald Trump would absolutely love to do, and other states would love to as well. I mean, looking at the super red states like legislatures like Ohio, et cetera. I mean, they would love to implement a whole bunch of this. Oklahoma, Missouri, I mean, Arkansas, right? Like all of these other states are like, oh, well, if Ron DeSantis can do it. And that's why sounding the alarm is so crucial.
I mean, even book banning. I mean, let's talk about book banning. I mean, we are sitting in, and I've got a whole bunch of these books even on my shelf, of let's see, 1619 Project. I've got 9 Women and Counting from our U.S. Senate candidate, U.S. senators of women. I've got over there Mouse. I mean, those books are actually banned inside of our public education system. And what it's doing is dumbing down our kids, not providing them opportunities to be exposed to all types of learning and different ideologies and different things to let them be thinking on their own. It has been just a disaster. Now, the more lawsuits, I mean, every single day for the last 6 years, he's been, pledged with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, that after he got the, click on TV, clicks on, we're banning this or we're doing this. And then he doesn't have to deal with the ramifications when all of that stuff is reversed in the courts, costing taxpayers in Florida millions upon millions of dollars to defend these cases. And it's a wake-up call to the rest of the country that are all using our talking points, and we appreciate that, to make sure people know what is happening in our state. But this is something that people even in Florida are starting to wake up to, which is why I'm feeling pretty bullish about Kamala Harris here, or even in the state of Florida, and kicking Rick Scott out, because people are People are tired of this nonsense.
I think, and I was just talking to Bob Seska about this as well. I think that the American people are not in that market anymore. They're not buying what they're selling, and now that we've lived a couple of years under, some of the policies that Donald Trump was able to, I wouldn't call policies, but his Supreme Court, his Federal Society Supreme Court, was able to implement or strip away, like Roe and the protections of Roe. We were talking briefly before we started about the ProPublica article about the reality of life in Georgia for women who were seeking very routine D&C procedures because they had to manage their own abortion care because they had nowhere to go in their own states. So they went to medication abortion, which is very, very safe, by the way. And in just a few cases, something can go wrong where you can seek medical attention in a hospital. But there were two women that he talked about specifically who were denied basic routine care, and one died at home. We'll talk about Amber. Amber went to the hospital because she just needed the D&C to get that little bit of tissue out. And the doctors there didn't know what they could or couldn't do because of the ban. So they worried about legal ramifications. They worried about prison sentences. And so for 20 hours, she went septic and her organs failed. And by the time they decided to do something, it was too late. And so this mother of a 6-year-old died. A completely preventable death. But that's the reality in red states all over this country, thanks to the Roe reversal and the Dobbs decision. And that's also the reality, like it potentially, I'm sure, in Florida as well, right now, under the bans, you have exceptions, but exceptions aren't exceptions, right? Like, do you have exceptions in your abortion laws as they stand now?
So we have 6 weeks,
Yeah.
which, as we all know, the female body that doesn't know that they're. And
Yeah.
let's talk about, like, even if you happen to know at 4 weeks that you are pregnant,
Which
to
nobody does.
get into a doctor in that 2-week period of time, and you need 2 doctors. And you also need a 24-hour waiting period. Thank you to Rick Scott. So not only do you need one appointment, but you need 2 appointments. And so that is at least for the 6-week legal aspect.
Mm.
Now we do have exceptions, but they're not really exceptions. They're for rape and incest. And let's talk through. I just saw Kamala Harris just put out a new ad, if people haven't seen it, that tells the story of one of those women that was on the DNC stage who had gotten raped by her stepdad starting at the age of 5, and impregnated her at 12. But what she would have had to do today, if she found out after 6 weeks, she would have to prove in a court of law that she had been sexually abused by her stepdad. Or if a rape victim would have had to prove that they were raped in order for them to get an abortion. The trauma, the repeat violence that a woman would have to do to prove all of that, I can't even pretend to put myself in those people's shoes. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, women being denied. And I'm not even talking about just, again, the choice of, deciding to have an abortion or not. But to your point, it's just general healthcare that somebody's going to the emergency room or going to their doctor and they're having, a miscarriage of some sort. Doctors are scared to give treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of what women across the state of Florida and the entire South are experiencing right now, having to make these really tough decisions about how to seek healthcare outside of their own home states if they can afford to travel.
If they can afford to travel, if they can take that much time, like you said, all of those appointments, the safe haven for you in Florida, for most of the South at this point, is Virginia, and that's hanging on by a thread. But you have to be able. Amber tried to get herself to North Carolina and wasn't able to make that appointment, and they only held it for 15 minutes. And this is where we are now, where women in the South right now, and a lot of other states in this country, it feels to me like those stories I was told when I was young about women with coat hangers. That's what it feels like. Those horrific stories that you thought. I remember thinking, how could people have lived that way? How could we have forced women to have to go through that? And here we are, now they're trying to manage, right, their own reproductive care and being left to die in the process because the doctors don't want to be imprisoned. And this is the reality the entire country potentially could face if Donald Trump were to be put in office in November.
Yeah, and they continue to double down. You've heard JD Vance's comments, you've heard Donald Trump's comments of wanting to prosecute women who go over, state lines for having access to healthcare, going after doctors. And I still don't fundamentally understand, like, okay, like you don't want to have an abortion, it's against your religious beliefs. Fine, don't have an abortion.
Right.
But don't put your own, political or religious beliefs on everybody else. Whatever happens, I'm Jewish, and in the Jewish faith, life begins at breath. And now you're telling me that I can't exercise my own religious beliefs on this type of decision making. Government needs to stay out of this conversation and needs to go back to the doctors and their patients, and not be criminalizing doctors who have an oath to take care of their patients, and you're asking them to choose between their own personal liberties of potentially going to jail or taking care of their patients. We're seeing OBGYNs all over the South not staying here, in some of our rural parts of Florida where there was one OBGYN in a 25 to 30-mile radius, and now those OBGYNs are leaving. And so now you're having whole huge swaths of populations that don't even have the basic necessity of care.
Right. Deserts. They're absolute deserts. And then in the states that are still places where people can go are inundated to the point where you can't see a doctor there either. So now women are left with no choices but to grapple with these things by themselves. And it's like it's dystopian, really. I mean, I had a miscarriage at over 20 weeks in 2015, and I didn't have to. I went into my doctor's office. My husband and I talked with my doctor. I was scheduled for the procedure that I needed within 2 days. I would have been scheduled the next day, but I was emotionally grappling with just the torment of all of it. And I had this need to sort of say goodbye, which is, whatever it is, what people go through, what they go through. But I never had to make sure that my local elected official got to weigh in on whether or not I was eligible for this. My doctor wasn't worried about going to prison if he gave me the procedure I needed. Like you said, it's his responsibility as a doctor to provide the medical care that I needed to stay alive, to stay healthy. It's absolutely mind-blowing that we could possibly live in a world, we do live in a world where that is not the case. But it not all is not lost, because the people of Florida, they decided that they were not, this was not, again, they're not buying this. And so, the ballot measure is designed to help the people of Florida have more of a say and reverse some of these draconian policies that have been imposed upon them.
That's right. I remember exactly where I was standing in Broward County when Roe fell. We all heard, we all got, I think it was when we still had, when it was a leak.
A leak.
So still outside of the official announcement from the court, but when it was a leak. And I remember standing on the steps of the federal courthouse in Broward County at a rally that we had organized that day. And I said, we need a new constitutional ballot initiative here in the state of Florida, because I knew this court. So we have a right to privacy inside the Florida Constitution that has, for the last 30 to 40 years, has upheld that access to reproductive health care fell underneath that right to privacy, just kind of like in the Florida and the U.S. Supreme Court. And so we knew that if the U.S. Supreme Court had denied that right to privacy, that it would fall here in the state of Florida. And unfortunately, we were right. And so we have been kind of grappling with the language, and a lot of the organizers, a lot of grassroots, people sat at this table and they got the language so that it is black and white, very easy to understand. But the people of the state, 1.4 million within like 6 months, which is not easy. It is not easy, especially not easy when you've got Republicans who continue to change the laws of how to gather petitions, how the cost of gathering these petitions have made it all these hoops that people need to jump through. Got 1.4 million signatures to get it onto the ballot. And now we are seeing again this broad coalition of Democrats, Republicans, and independents that are just not going to take it anymore. They're hearing the stories. They don't want to go back, and they want to make sure that reproductive freedom is back into the Florida Constitution. We have a lot of work to still do, because we're seeing that, of course, DeSantis using the full power of government and his powers to go after Amendment 4. We're seeing obviously those anti-choice groups coming out, but I think people at this point, they know where they are in this, and it's about freedom and true freedom, not the freedom that DeSantis kind of touts. But this is our way that we take back our voice and make sure that it's very clear in the Florida Constitution. But I'm going to add one extra thing. It is not enough just to vote for Amendment 4. that we cannot be just voting for Amendment 4 and sending people like Rick Scott and these Republicans members of Congress, or even the Republican legislators who got us here to the 6 weeks, give them free passes. They've got to be held accountable too. We know that Rick Scott would absolutely vote for an all-out national abortion ban. So people need to not be voting for Amendment 4 and Rick Scott. That is a counter to your own needs. So it's important that people are, and even if you're Republican and you've been Republican your whole life and you've never voted for a Democrat, it is time to put, country and democracy around before partisan politics. Y'all can go back to being, Republicans after on November 6th. But if there is no November 5th, there may not be a future election. So it really is important that people understand this moment and we can get out of it, but we need all hands on deck.
I could not agree more. I mean, if Dick Cheney could do it, folks, like we can, it's time for country and democracy over party. He said, if we don't right now, there's not going to be potentially another opportunity to have these conversations. So now's the time to make a stand for democracy. And we, the people, have the power to change our own reality and shape the course of our future. But you are doing that on the ground in real time, kicking ass. And it is such an absolute honor to even be able to say that I know you, but to just
vice versa. Yeah.
to bask in like just how powerful and badass and like just you don't quit. There's no quit. You're not gonna stop. You don't have that. I don't think you have that setting.
I don't have that setting. I joke that I've been crisscrossing our stake nonstop besides those few months of COVID for 6 straight years. When I was first running as Commissioner of Agriculture, and then the 4 years as Commissioner, and then running for governor, and now running the party. And so that's why I get to stand here and talk about how incredible Floridians are, because I have seen the best of the best. I'll always tell this story. We got hit by a hurricane, Hurricane Ian, in Fort Myers and Lee County, which is a predominantly Republican part of our state. And the eastern part of that county is agriculture. And I went out to some of our dairy farmers after we got hit by this hurricane when I was still commissioner, and we toured the whole entire property, and we sat down, and I'm talking about like 5th generation dairy farmer, like somebody that under these current world circumstances would not be voting Democrat, and turns to me and goes, "Commissioner, I don't understand. Why do we care if people are yellow or blue or green or red or who they love? Are they showing up to work tomorrow?" And it's just as basic as that. And I think that we've gone all so lost in partisan politics and bickering and divisiveness, when a majority of this country are just wholesome, hardworking people that just want to put a roof over their head, make sure their kids are coming home from school and don't have to deal with gun violence, that they've gotten opportunities for upward mobility and the capitalist dream that is America. And we get so lost in, policies that we're forgetting that people just want government to work and stay out of their lives. And we've gone in such a extreme direction, but the people of the state are seeing what is on the ground. They're understanding what is at stake. And the state is going to swing back. I mean, I've been saying it for a year and a half. And every single day as I cross our state, and I'm seeing more and more Republicans coming out. I was on a phone call with a Republican friend of mine that's out in Fort Myers, and he said this to verbatim. He's like, "Nick," he's like, "I love you, ma'am, but I'm not sure that I can vote for Kamala Harris, but I certainly can't vote for Donald Trump." And so those are the conversations that are truly happening all across the state and across this country, of people being in this moral moment of, what does, and he's expecting a baby in a couple of months. So he's and has an older daughter. And so he's grappling with these conversations too, which we shouldn't have had to deal with. But I feel pretty confident that we're going to have victory in November.
Well, from your lips to God's ears. Boy, would I love, I call Rick Scott Floridamort because he looks like Voldemort. So I call him Floridamort. Boy, remember when he went down to Mar-a-Lago with that little finger bowl right after January 6th? Like, bye.
And what's funny about that is nobody likes Rick Scott. Like, and I'm not even making this up. He has 35% approval rating in the state. Like, to have run 3 times statewide, to be representing the state for 14 years, and you have 35% approval rating, like, you have to work really hard to get to that number. And so we are seeing people being like, all right, enough of Rick Scott. He's bad on Social Security, he's bad on Medicare, he's bad on Medicaid, he's bad on the environment, he's bad on weed, and he's certainly bad on reproductive health care, continuing to vote against IVF protections and contraception. People are tired and they want government to work and stay out of their business.
Yeah, I love it. Tim Walz always says, it's none of your business. That's the thing, it's none of your business. Like you said, live your life. Live your life. But there's more that connects us than divides us. That has always been the case. It's time that we remember that and pull together in this moment. And I love that you're unifying people in your state, knocking on doors in every corner, red or blue, and making a change. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Everybody that I said or will ever say, I talked to Nikki Fried, they'll go, she's the best. She's the best. She's the best. I swear to God. Oh my God, she's the best, right? She's the best. This is what they say. It's almost like there's a script. That's what they say instantly. She's the best. So you're the best.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm like, look, like I said, I love the state and I wasn't going to run for chair. Everybody after I was done being commissioner and didn't know what I knew one thing was for sure. I was going to make sure that Ron DeSantis was never president of the United States. I had that mission.
Mission accomplished.
That was mission accomplished. That was my mission. But it was, so I wasn't going to run. And everybody in my life was like, Nikki, you run for chair of the Florida Democratic Party. Your career is over. Like there's no win here. And so I was like, you know what? I don't take no very well. And I really it was two issues that got me off the couch to say, all right, in order for us to really start taking back the state, and when I say take back Florida, which is our tag phrase for the party, I don't mean blue. I don't mean take it back for Democrats. I mean, take it back for the people. And we're putting this huge umbrella here. But the two issues that got me off the couch was one, the 6-week abortion ban, which I got myself arrested on. It wasn't intentional, but was arrested last year.
Badass.
It was not going down without a fight. And the other was the attacks on higher education. I was past student body president at the University of Florida. So you see my little gator stuff behind me. And he started to attack DEI at higher ed and precluding state resources to go towards even Hispanic Heritage Month and Black Student Union and all the women's organizations. And I just knew that I would not be the person I am today and be able to fight the way I fight for marginalized communities if I had not been exposed to other types of people, cultures, backgrounds at UF. And, and I said, I can't sit back and watch him completely destroy the culture of the state. And our higher education system is one of the best in the nations. And unfortunately, everything that I said when I ran is true. UF's numbers are going down. FSU's numbers are going down. He completely took over a progressive one of our colleges and put his past commissioner of education there, who's making $1.2 million a year, which is a lot of money. And and enrollment has gone down. And we've seen even the past president of the University of Florida that he handpicked and went around typical processes, just quit and has found that he had the largest slush fund that we've ever seen at any of our colleges and universities, just money to friends. And it's gross. It is so gross of what has happened here in Florida that everybody across our state and our country should be alarmed by the corruption that is really coming out of Florida.
And again, blueprint for all those other red states and the federal government. So you're sounding the alarm, and that's going to help the entire country. So thank you for that. And I'm sorry for what's going on with the universities, but it's time to get that pudding cup finger fucker.
or the boots, there's lots of fun. And people kept asking me, as he was running for president, and of course, I again had spent a lot of time with him and in his surroundings, and we've taken mission trips together. And they said, "Is this a factual?" And I said, "Yes." I can count in the 4 years how many times he made eye contact with me. The answer is twice in 4 years. This is a guy who is weird, has always been weird. And so when the rest of the country started to understand how weird he truly is, there's a little bit of self-pride. that you all get to experience all the things that I have been saying for the last 4 years.
Yeah, he left Congress with no friends. Everybody's like, he had no friends. He had no friends. It's weird he had no friends. And then just the last thing is because Donald Trump couldn't look at Kamala either. So they're afraid of strong women. You know what I mean? They can't stand up to them. So he's afraid of you, but he's also weird. But he's afraid of you.
It's all good. Oh,
My
good.
goodness.
The
Yeah.
latest actually is the Republican Party of chair of Florida has actually been trolling me a lot for the last 3 years. And I think he has become completely unhinged to the point that they're making memes about him. Chris Boozy on Twitter has just lit him up. It is actually pretty hysterical watching. And again, I don't watch because I muted him, but people keep sending me like memes of him. And I get it. You know, if I thought I was walking into a pretty cushy job and had not had a Democrat win statewide, well, I won in 2018, but presidency, and I thought it was going to be a shoe-in, and all of a sudden Kamala Harris, the top of the ticket, and Florida may go blue. And your own political career is over in 48 days. I may be a little bit, unhinged too.
Unhinged. I doubt it though. You'd be way smarter about it, at least, but that's for sure. And you'd have much better memes. But yeah, they're all so weird. JD Vance. I mean, I can't even begin to start on him. But well, thank you for this time. Thank you for everything that you do. I'm just so inspired by you. Everybody, wherever they can, what can they do? By the way, where can people go? How can they help the Democratic Party in Florida?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's all hands on deck. It's going on to our website, floridadems.org. That is where you can go to sign up to volunteer. And of course, right now we are stretching every dollar to the fullest extent. So every dollar is really important in this part of the get out the vote. And so if you can afford to give a couple dollars to the party, I promise you we're putting good usage to it. And another fun note, we retired the donkey here in the state of Florida. So we do not have the Florida donkey anymore as our mascot. It is a long story of where it came from, Andrew Jackson. So definitely look up that story. Yeah, he was called a jackass in his presidential campaign, and he leaned into it. And so that's how we got the donkey.
I did
So,
not know that. I did
so
not know that.
yeah, so we
Not
got
for
rid of the
everybody to know
donkey. We got rid of the donkey, and now we have the panther. So
Love it. I love it. You know, a little PTSD about the Panthers and the Rangers. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's all good. They're good. They're a good organization. They do good things. But yeah, let's kick the donkey in the ass, right? Let's do it as a national party too. Okay, so everybody go do all of those things and check out that story. But I'm probably gonna go down that rabbit hole right now about the donkey. Thank you so much, and let's go, Florida. Let's go.
Yep. Have a lot of optimism here. Don't ever sleep on Florida. Don't ever count us out. We are fighting really hard on the ground, and we're going to shock the world. I don't want to say just the country, but the world in November.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I'm not the only one whose hair is standing up on end. Okay, well, that is a great note to end on, guys. That concludes this episode of the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast. Thank you again to my wonderful guest, Nikki Fried, who is again kicking ass and making hairs stand up on their end. Okay, well, thanks everybody, and thanks, Nikki. We will see you guys next week. Make sure that you go to all the places that Nikki just pointed out, and I'll put them all in the link in this on YouTube and all the places. So thank you so much, Nikki.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, bye-bye.